Good morning, everyone. My name is Ellen Quaadgras. I am the minister here, and I also want to welcome you to Westminster, a virtual sanctuary in what has been a very stormy week. Welcome. Our theme this month is imagination, and our theme for today's service is our relationship as humans with what I will call imaginative truths. That is, truths that are not exactly true, which we have been seeing a lot of lately. And while today's service took shape well before the events of this past week, those events are a culmination of trends that we have, of course, been seeing for some time. And while today's service does not focus on the storming of the Capitol, you've probably seen and read enough about that in the last few days, I will reflect on those longer trends, those wider currents, those deeper human tendencies that played into what happened, as well as on some older ideas that just might show us something about healing and how we might live our lives. Let us begin imagining our way into the future with these words on vision, adapted from Reverend Gretchen Haley. Here we are at the turning of the new year, a natural time for vision, for imagination. Let us remember it and offer it. Reclaim the vision you've tried to talk yourself down from. Reclaim your wildest dreams, the beauty that whispers to you to follow and build and become. Reclaim it. Offer it for this world that seems to be coming undone. This world divided by made-up borders, fake fights and lies, and all that needs forgiveness. Here, in this space, stir up your steadfast hope, your resolute clarity of all that is still possible. Be generous with your dreaming and brave. All paths to the future are born in this courage of imagination, this willingness to shed, to salvage, to start again, to be a blessing for each other, and to be blessed. Come, let us worship together.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. see trouble in the air over my head. I see trouble in the air over my head. I see trouble in the air. There must be a God somewhere over my head. I hear music in the air over my head. I hear music in the air over my head. I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
Amen. I invite all who would like to join me for our unison affirmation. You'll be invited to unmute yourself. It will be posted in the chat momentarily. There it is. Love is the spirit and service is our mission. This is our to dwell together in peace, to seek
love,
and to help one another.
Here at Westminster, we share our offering every month with a different organization that shares our values or our mission. Our January Share the Plate is the Providence Rescue Mission, providing a safe place to spend the night. It is open all year to provide emergency overnight accommodations of 70 homeless men and 30 homeless women. Nearly 40,000 people receive safe shelter annually through this program. The other half of the offering goes to support the good work of this community. You can donate using the link that is now being put in the chat. The offering will be now given and received with gratitude.
While, as noted, the focus of today's service isn't on the events of this past week, they are nevertheless in the air. Those images, angry faces, swarming crowds, chaos, confusion, imprinted on our minds, etched in our imagination. There's a reading in the packet this month from Beatrice Bruteau, in which she describes how our imagination can escalate or de-escalate tensions among humans. She gives an example. We might interpret someone's sharp tone of voice, she suggests, even if it was accidental. We might interpret that personally, and we begin to give that incident life in our minds. They don't like us, we tell ourselves. So we are on the lookout for more hostility, even as we show distrust and unfriendliness in turn, which naturally have their effect on the other person. By building this up in our imagination, we develop and further a relationship of hostility, she writes. On the other hand, she also suggests that we can use our imaginations to create conditions for a very different kind of relationship, something that feels different to us and is experienced differently by the other person. In that spirit, I invite us to lean in another direction with whatever tensions or divisions we perceive with whoever is on our minds this morning, in our lives, or in the wider world. In that spirit, I invite us to consider the following reading by Rumi.
Our reading this morning is by the Sufi poet Rumi. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. You must ask for what you really want. The two worlds touch. Don't go back to sleep.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community.
Do you know the game Truth or Dare? Popular with teenagers, each person has to pick whether they'll be asked a truth question or challenged with a dare. Truth questions like, when was the last time you cried? What's your biggest fear? What's the worst thing you've ever done? Nice, revealing, vulnerable, nerve-wracking questions. Or if you prefer, you can instead request a dare, like give a foot massage to the person on your left. Post your oldest selfie on your Instagram accounts. As you can see, it makes for hours of fun, especially if you are between the ages of 10 and 18. And really, whichever way you pick, the truth or the dare, it's designed to be edgy. It takes some chutzpah. It takes some dare to play. And you may know the game, Two Truths and a Lie. It's a get to know you game where each person shares two things about themselves that are true and one thing that's a lie, and everyone else has to guess which is which. It's fun. You get to say imaginative, outrageous things, and you get to lie on purpose. And you often make some great friends playing games like that. At least I know I have. Given the rampant misinformation and conspiracy theories that fueled this past week's events and the ongoing impact of disinformation everywhere, I've been thinking a lot about humanity's relationship to truth, truths and lies, truths and dares. What shapes our relationship to truth? What kind of dare does it take to speak truth or to hear it? When I was growing up, there was truth and there were lies. There were facts and there were falsehoods. Maybe the truth got stretched now and again, but basically you knew the ground on which you stood. It doesn't seem to be that way anymore. Now, truth no longer appears to be universal. My truth and your truth sometimes collide, and that's dividing us. Political parties, friends, family members. How did we get here? As I was pondering, it led me right back to childhood, where I not only learned to play those two games, but where I learned all kinds of things. I learned facts and figures. I learned we had made it out of the dark ages and smart people like Newton and Einstein had unlocked the secrets of the universe. Well, maybe not all of them. There were a few left for modern day astrophysicists, but most of the important stuff I learned, we got that covered. It was all very reassuring. We had ground to stand on and it felt solid. Thinking back on it though, even while I was surrounded by facts, I was also surrounded by non-facts, not necessarily threatening ones, not falsehoods exactly, but just, non-facts, imagination, imaginary characters from books and movies, flights of fantasy from storytellers or TV shows. I spent a lot of time watching sitcoms growing up, not exactly full of lies, but not exactly a reflection of the truth either. Not to mention the ads, which were created by people gifted at stretching reality. And then, of course, there was the Tooth Fairy and Santa, charming, but not technically true. Religion, which I will defend as having truth somewhere in its mythology, also has never been technically factual. And then, of course, there were the many viewpoints, ideas, and opinions of the people around me. Some truth there, of course, but also probably some not exactly truth. depending on the person. All part of the stew of information and imagination that many of us grew up in. So we had to pick and choose. What do I believe? Which stories, which people, which books, which ideas? And we built our personal tree of knowledge, our personal belief system, accepting some ideas, rejecting others. This narrative I believe because I trust my parents. That one I don't because I don't like that teacher. This idea sounds right because it fits what I already think. This one sounds like someone trying to sell me something. That one reflects how I see myself. And this one I believe because my family says it's true, or maybe that's exactly why I don't believe it. Sometimes we picked by feel more than evidence. Sometimes we picked by loyalty more than logic. However we did it, we built some structure, some way of seeing and understanding the world from among that soup of conflicting ideas. We built a life raft, you might say, in that sea of confusion. Something to help each of us make sense of the world, something to help guide us on our way. Kind of a homemade life raft, though, at least for mine. I'm picturing driftwood held together with some duct tape and baling wire, facts as well as feelings, pieces pulled from here and there, certified truths as well as a whole host of assumptions, not exactly 100% solid ground. As I thought about it, I realized that everyone goes through something like this, is exposed to facts and fiction, some of which stick and some do not. Everyone is building their own raft of truth. Different rafts from different materials, which lead people to see differently and want different things for their lives and for the world. And maybe that would all be fine if we never had to work with or be with or live with people who see things differently, but we do. And we need to, we get to make decisions together, run countries together, run communities, churches, or households together. We need to work with each other all the time, even when we don't agree. And we do not always agree politically or personally, as we all know. Sometimes it's not a problem, we compromise, no big deal. But sometimes those disagreements feel as fundamental as the ground we stand on, or the raft we float on. Sometimes when someone promotes a very different viewpoint, it can feel like we are losing the ground we stand on. Like something important we've built on our foundations is at risk of being pulled out from under us. Once in a while, it can even feel like I will go under. I will lose myself, my identity, or whatever I feel I stand for if I don't fight. Unfortunately, those who disagree often feel the same way. Maybe it's about climate change or racial justice. It could be about LGBTQ plus rights or women's rights or gun rights or religious freedom. Or maybe it's not about politics at all, but a disagreement with your partner about whether to risk going to the gym with or without a mask, or school decisions for the kids, or whether they are going to take that promotion, which would include moving to another state. Whatever the specifics, when we feel something fundamental to us is threatened, something happens. At least here's what happens for me. The more threatened I feel, the more starkly I see my truths. I look down at that tangle of fact and fiction and narrative on which I stand, and all I can see are the places I know I'm right. And the more threatened I feel, the more starkly I see their confusion, the lies on which they stand, or even what looks like their heartlessness. The more threatened I feel, the less the other person looks like another good, if sometimes confused, human, and the more they look just like a threat to be defeated or dismissed or fought with. And yes, that same thing often happens for them too. That defensive, combative energy is contagious. We infect each other. And we just grow further apart. It's hard. You will find countless articles, books, advice columns, TED Talks about what to do when you have a conflict with someone that runs that deep, whether it is personal or political. I won't cover the spectrum. There's a lot of wisdom out there. What I offer today is another take, a perspective I've been trying to apply in my own life, a spiritual perspective, a spiritual approach, another tool for your toolbox that you can try too. But it takes some dare. It takes some willingness to let go of the ground you stand on and venture beyond it. What was that quote in the opening slide? We stand on an island of knowledge in a sea of mystery. It takes stepping off the island and into that sea, which is especially challenging in situations where we're pretty sure we're right, or where we're really sure they are wrong. There is a story retold here by Jack Kornfield about Japanese Zen poet Ryokan. He was someone, Kornfield notes, who filled his life with the spirit of ordinariness and transformed those he touched. He also, I will add, had an unconventional approach to handling difficulties with other people. Apparently, he never preached to or reprimanded anyone, even when he was clearly right. Once, this story goes, his brother asked Ryokan to visit his house and speak to his delinquent son. Ryokan came, but did not say a word of admonition to the boy. He stayed overnight, then prepared to leave the next morning. As the wayward nephew was lacing Ryokan's straw sandals, he felt a drop of warm water. Glancing up, he saw Ryokan looking down at him, his eyes full of tears. Ryokan then returned home, and as the story goes, the nephew changed for the better. I love that story because it speaks to something very different from how we typically handle a situation in which we are pretty sure that someone else is off. But Ryokan didn't even try to talk to his nephew, didn't try to convince him, didn't approach him with all the good, logical reasons why he should think differently or do things differently, but still, somehow, something happened. Something changed. Something shifted for the boy. Now, of course, in real life, things don't always go like this. Our love for someone alone is often not enough to turn them around, no matter how poignantly we express it. And as one person I shared this story with assumed, I don't think the point is to try to manipulate people with tears. But this anecdote is pointing to something that can happen when our focus is not on rightness or wrongness, but on something beyond that. It's about what can happen when we don't escalate a divisive dynamic and instead create conditions for something else. Now, it turns out to be not quite as easy as this anecdote makes it sound. There's another version of the story which also has Ryokan staying up meditating all night before this moment with his nephew, which speaks to some inner work on Ryokan's part. Meditating is all about letting go of thoughts and beliefs to allow for what is present now. Ryokan was making space, not only for his nephew, but for his own sadness and for his heart to show. When I am willing to do this, I have found I have to make room not just for sadness, but for all kinds of discomfort. Stepping off of certainty can feel to me like I am being tossed into the water, into uncertainty. I have to ask myself, maybe I am wrong about this or that. If not in fact, then perhaps in attitude. Maybe what I like to call my steadfast conviction actually may sometimes include a dash of inflexibility. I forget that my feeling of being right could perhaps feel like righteousness to someone on the other side. And I forget that it's possible that the catastrophic outcome I envision if the other person has their way, it's possible that that vision may not be 100% correct. I mean, how can I know for sure, really? On the other hand, if I just let go and trust, will I be okay? Will they be okay? What will happen? I can't know either way. Letting go of our particular convictions, even if just for a little while, takes some dare. It is, in some situations, downright unnerving. I think of my friend, I'll call him Jim, whose son struggled for years with a meth addiction. And Jim believed for many years that if he just found the right words or took the right actions, his son would change his ways, or at least Jim could keep him safe. It took years, many years, before my friend realized that when he intervened on his son's behalf by sending money, for example, it wasn't actually keeping him safe. Neither his words nor his money could do that for sure. And it took many years before he realized that his efforts were actually getting in the way of his son being able to see and take responsibility for his own situation himself, that he was getting in the way of his son's need to face his own insides himself. And it took many years before he realized that when he stopped intervening and started simply loving, he would have to face his own heart-wrenching sadness and powerlessness, as well as his fear that something terrible would happen, which he finally understood he couldn't prevent anyway, and never could have. Jim's son happens to be in recovery these days. I won't pretend to know that the father's change in actions made all the difference. I have no idea. All I know is that when the father let go, he himself was freed, and that he stopped making the situation worse by feeding his son's habit. And is it possible he helped make room for something different to happen? Maybe. But there are no guarantees, of course. And letting go is not magic. Making space does not solve all problems, nor is the only thing we need to do with people on the other side of an important disagreement. It's not true that the only thing we need to do is stop arguing with them. Clearly, that's not the case. Sometimes we need to take action. Insist on driving our friend home after that fourth drink. Set clear expectations with a wayward child. Sometimes we must speak up, write articles, protest in the streets, organize voters, lobby politicians, call in the National Guard to stop harm from being done. And there is something here. When we are locked in disagreement, we are just that, locked. All that tension, all that anger, all that division that we see now publicly amplified by some unsavory opportunists denies a whole other level of basic human connection. Connection that can happen when we are relaxed, when we are open, maybe even playful, like we were as kids, playing games together. As you use, we believe everyone has a spark of the divine. To me, that means everyone has the capacity to find truth, to recognize it, to open to it. And I have a feeling the more relaxed and connected humans feel, the more clearly we can see. The less defensive we feel, the more willing any of us will be to look at that tangle that is at our very own feet. The more love we experience, the more supported we will feel to find a truth that honors us all. We've heard a lot in recent years about how the World Wide Web is amplifying our divisions. This month, let's envision something else. A different kind of network, a different kind of worldwide web of relationships and care built one-on-one in families, with friends, in congregations and communities. We can build it wherever we go, we can build it, beginning right in our imaginations. The fighting doesn't work in the long run anyway, and never has, as has been confirmed again this week. Could it instead be that out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field where we can meet? A place where, when the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. What is it we really want? May the two worlds touch. May we stay awake to help make it so. Amen. Feel free to join into our closing hymn, Heart Wide Open. The words will be posted in the chat.
Keep your heart wide open, though the waves wanna push you around.
You got to keep your heart wide open till your faith brings you back to solid ground. I'm gonna keep your heart. I'm gonna keep wide open. I'm gonna keep my heart wide open. Though the waves want to push around, though the waves want to push me around, I'm gonna keep your heart. I'm gonna keep wide open. I'm gonna keep my heart wide open until my faith brings me back to solid ground. Until my faith brings me back to solid ground. I'm gonna keep your heart. I'm gonna keep wide open. I'm gonna keep my heart wide open. Though the waves want to push around, though the waves want to push me around, I'm gonna keep your heart. I'm gonna keep wide open. I'm gonna keep my heart wide open until my faith brings me back to solid ground. Until my faith brings me back to solid